Welcome, everyone, to Findaway Voices and Draft2Digital's series of live author events celebrating June Audiobook Month. Welcome. Today I'm here with my co-host, Kevin Tumlinson.
Hello.
And we're here with award-winning romance writer, Kennedy Ryan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It was just outclassing us immediately.
Yeah.
Just showed up.
We've had such a good time chatting before we started here. Yep, absolutely. Well, let me introduce these folks here. First, I'm Scott Curry, your host, marketing strategist, Findaway Voices, and we have Kevin Tumlinson here, a best-selling and award-winning author and content creator known as the voice of indie publishing. He's the director of marketing and PR of Draft2Digital, the world's largest distributor of books for independent authors and publishers. And our guest today, we are so excited about this. We have with us Kennedy Ryan, a RITA and Audie Award winner, USA Today bestselling author. Kennedy Ryan writes for women of all walks of life, empowering them and placing them firmly at the center of each story and in charge of their own destinies. Her heroes respect, cherish, and lose their minds for the women who capture their hearts. Kennedy and her writings have been featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul, USA Today, Entertainment Weekly, Glamour, Cosmopolitan, Time, O Magazine, and many, many others. She is a wife to her lifetime lover and a passionate autism advocate and mother to an extraordinary son. Welcome, Kennedy.
Hi, thank you, guys. I'm so excited to talk with you this morning. Thank you for having me.
That wears off. You won't be excited that much longer.
Well, I'm gonna cling to this feeling for as long as it's here.
Good. That's awesome. Well, where would we like to start today, Mr. Kevin?
First, so we did this last time. I want to make sure that we tell people where they can get their questions answered.
Right.
Can you let people know where people can get their questions
answered? Let's do a little platform overview here. We are on Livestorm, super cool platform. Down in your lower right, we have a chat. And in the chat, we have a bunch of Findaway Voices team members that are here to help. And right next to that, we have a questions tab. And in that questions tab, we would love for you to add any questions you have for Kennedy, and we'll answer them at the end of the program. If you put them in chat, they might get lost. So that's why we have that questions tab, to make sure we get to them. And if we don't get to all of them, we will answer them for you at some point through our support at findawayvoices.com. So there's also a poll down here too. So any authors in the audience, we would love to know if you've ever made an audiobook before, and if not, what's held you back? So other than that,
Findaway is here to make sure that doesn't happen anymore.
Exactly, because we have a really great platform to help you do it. So,
all right.
cool.
So Kennedy, we talked a little before everyone went live, so you kind of know what we're going to get into here. But one of the things that we want to talk about is from the perspective of craft. You surely have, so because we talked about your email newsletter, we talked about all kinds of things, but surely you have a well-developed process for crafting a book. Can you tell me that's what that is?
It is a wild ride. It's so funny because I am a very disciplined writer for about 2 months. It's like, well, I listen to my friends and they're like, you have to write every day, but in C, you have to write every day. And for a long time, I tried to, and that I think consistency is incredibly important. Yeah. I've taken the craft courses, like all of that. Yeah. But for me, and some of it is the nature of the books I write and the degree of research that it requires. For some of the books that I write, I don't write every day. When I'm writing a book, it might take me 5 months. One book took me 2 years to write. It might take me 5 months to write the book, and there may only be 2 months where my butt is actually in the seat and I'm typing, and the other 3 months are research. Yeah. It depends on the book. But for me, what's huge is that I am intimately acquainted with that character, with those characters, that I understand their motivations, and that I can speak their language fluently. And what I mean by that is I write a lot outside of my experience. With my last audiobook and book, for example, Real, the research was incredible. You know, I was steeped in it. It was these buckets of research. One was Hollywood, you know, because it was a director and an actress, and she started with Broadway, and that's not, you know, my lane at all. And then they're making a biopic. And so there is this Harlem Renaissance storyline that runs throughout the book, and there are excerpts of the actual script. And so I had to really steep myself in that era and understanding, you know, what that looked like. And then the heroine has lupus, which of course is a chronic illness. And I had to, you know, each bucket involves interviews. You know, the lupus bucket was 8 to 10 interviews. The Hollywood bucket, another 8 to 10 interviews. And you know, masterclass, how you have the masterclass. I took Martin Scorsese's, I took Spike Lee's, I took cinematographers. I've done them all. I did master classes with cinematographers, with directors, with actresses, with Broadway actresses. I mean, like for weeks, all I did was take these master classes in Broadway and Hollywood so that I could speak fluently as a director, you know, as an actress. Not to get too deep into this particular audiobook, but I think that the process I went through for Real is very indicative of how I approach writing in general. I was very fortunate that my narrator, one of my narrators for Real, is actually a Broadway actress. And she was in Slave Play, which is as of last year the most Tony nominated play ever. So she was in Slave Play, and then the pandemic happened and Broadway shut down. And she was like, what am I gonna do with my life? And someone suggested that she start narrating. And so I was very fortunate that I was the first like romance book, the first full-length novel that she was one of the lead narrators for, Queen Move. So we worked together on that, which was amazing. But for Real, I was like, now she's a Broadway actress. And I ended up interviewing her like extensively, sending her drafts, and she would say, okay, well, there's a bell that we ring right before we go on. Okay, this is what you would find in the dressing room. Like, she helped me flesh out those details. And to have a narrator who almost was like a collaborator, it enriched the process, and I think the story so much. And then she put me in touch with her friends who were actresses who had transitioned from Broadway to Hollywood. And, you know, and then I'm very fortunate that some of my books have been optioned for television and film. And I got to, you know, I would email my producers like, would you guys be willing to let me interview? I'm writing this book. I have no idea you know, what it's like. And so I ended up they put me in touch with other people. So it was just, I don't know, research is a huge part of my process.
See, and I wanted to kind of point out, you had sort of a misnomer that you were writing and then researching, but that wasn't writing. Like it is writing. It is writing. And it is writing. It's very much like we tend to concentrate on the production side of writing.
The typing, you know, and for me, and so my friends used to say, Kennedy, are you writing yet? You know, like, because they're sitting with their word counts every day. And then it's like, okay, I got, 1,500 words. How many did you get? And I used to feel so much pressure, like, oh my gosh, all my friends are writing 1,500 words a day, 2,000 words a day. What did I do? I interviewed 6 people. You know, I took 3 master classes. It depends. Like, for me, that is writing. Before I write a book, my playlist is like 90 songs. Music is such a huge part of my process. Like, I build that music playlist out before. It's so funny. There is because sometimes the playlist, I'll hear a song, sometimes lyrically it connects with what I know the story's going to be, but sometimes it just feels like the song. Like it just feels like the story. And so there was a I think it's Zane has this is just so funny. I'm so off the road right now. I'm sorry.
No. Hey, look, we're in a webinar 4x4.
Kennedy. Yeah,
we're right there with you.
So I think it's Zayn has a song called Trampoline. And it just felt there was nothing in my story that had anything to do with the trampoline, but I started listening to the song and I added to the playlist. And I just kept, when I'm writing a book, really the only thing I listen to is that playlist. So the whole world has moved on to like Doja Cat. And by the time I come out, I'm like, who's Doja Cat? You know, because I'm only listening to that playlist for most of my writing period. And so I just kept listening to that song and I was like, oh, and by the time, you know, I got to writing, there's a whole scene where their first kiss is on this trampoline. And I'm like, you know, it's almost like this symbiosis where those two elements start to feed each other a little bit. So, you know.
That's you great. Know, one of the things you said there, Katie, is something that we have Voices talk about a lot, is that your narrator is like your teammate. It's like your partner in this. And I love that you've taken this to a whole new level that I've never even heard anything like that. That's just
for that, it worked out for that book, you know? I mean, but that audiobook with Reel, not to get too deep into Reel specifically, but it was just, it was a process like I'd never done before. I ended up, as I was writing it, like I said, there's this script. There are excerpts from the script that run throughout the entire book. And at first I thought, well, it's just going to be kind of like a little addition. And I was like, Ebony can handle that. I can get Ebony to read those excerpts and to read, you know, the heroine's part. And then I've got Jacoby Diem, who's amazing, and he'll read the hero's part. And as I started writing, the character it's basically, they're doing a biopic of this long lost entertainer. She's a Black singer from the 20s, 30s, 40s. And like so many, her story has been lost, undersung. You know, so many people have forgotten about her, or her contributions have been commodified, appropriated. She has not gotten her due. And so this director sees he's like doing research in Alabama and sees this little, you know, those little placards on the side of a road that say such and such was born here. It says Desi Blue was born here. And he's like, who the heck is Desi Blue? You know, and so he starts digging into her life and decides he's going to make her life story. And I'm going to tell my age here, but if you remember Dorothy Dandridge, like the way in the 90s, Halle Berry kind of dug into Dorothy Dandridge and did her life story and really introduced someone who was a megastar, whose story had been, to a large degree for the general public, been lost. And so it's kind of like that. So I'm writing this and I'm like, okay, well, Desi Blue we'll have just a few excerpts from her script. It ended up being a good quarter of the book. And it was so distinct that I knew, okay, Ebony can't voice both of these. Like there has to be a distinct voice that is Desi Blue. And as I started listening, Lyric Audiobooks produced it for me. And we had Ebony, the narrator, lined up. You know, we had Jacoby lined up. And, you know, you line these narrators up months in advance. They're so popular and they're so in demand. And we're like at the end of when you would typically request a narrator. And I was like, I think I need one more narrator. And they're like, oh, okay, one more narrator. And then I was like, because she's a singer and an actress. And then I was like, and I think there's going to be singing. And they were like,
so you just put on like a little Broadway show on the audiobook.
It just started to grow and grow. And they were like singing. And so it ended up that we had to get another narrator. It's Nicole Small. We brought Nicole Small in, and she and when you talk about collaborating, I'm just so pushy. I was like, do you think I could talk to Nicole? And they were like, okay. So Nicole and I get on the phone and we're talking about, I'm telling her how I hear this voice in my head and the different characters who she has to play. And then I had never written a script, like a movie script. Right. And so I literally bought the Cotton Club script off Amazon. And I started studying it for format, and it was in the same era on purpose, obviously. And so I kind of just used that as a blueprint for how I was going to write my script in the context of my book.
It's very smart.
And so, of course, when you're writing that, it's got all of the notes. You know, it's like cow, Desi, cow, Desi. And Nicole and I literally went through all of her parts and we're like, okay, when you're seeing it, you have to have that. But when you're listening, it's such a different experience that becomes so intrusive. So we went through the script and said, okay, you will do all of the like notes and all of the like name attributions up until this point, and then we'll take all of those away so that the script flows for the audiobook in a way that, you know, it's not necessary for the book itself. So Nicole was involved, and then lyric audiobooks, I found a singer. You know, there's a singer, and Lyric put me in touch with Thai Deaf Studios in Atlanta. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and we had a trumpet player. I mean, it was just, it became this whole production. And I ended up finding 2 songs that were in the public domain, so I didn't have to, you know, do a lot with copyright. Body and Soul was one, which is a song that Billie Holiday sang a lot.
Yes.
And Look for the Silver Lining was the other. And when I tell you, they just, having those songs performed just added layers to the audio experience in a way that I could not have anticipated. And so I was very fortunate to have such a stellar team involved. And I know I've gone totally into audio from
look, hey, no, here's what's funny. We have like a list of questions. You just like, you know, 15, 20 questions. You just answered like 30 of them. So
for real. Yeah, absolutely did.
No, that's great.
I'm lucky to talk about.
I love interviews like this because I can just kind of sit back, have my coffee.
Yeah, I know. We're just enjoying it. It was fantastic. So how did it feel when you won an Audie for this?
Oh, wow. You know, it's it's so funny because Andy Art, who, you know, runs Lyric Audiobooks, also Hall of Fame narrator, but runs Lyric Audiobooks. After I hope she doesn't mind me telling this. Maybe I'll ask for forgiveness instead of permission. But after we had finished it, you know, it's the music was there, these 3 amazing narrators with the script, like it just felt so full. And when I was writing like my author's note, I started crying. And I was like, because this book is this epic love story, of course, but it's also my love letter to Black artists whose accomplishments have been overlooked. And it's me saying, thank you. Like, I'm standing on your shoulders, you know, for what you accomplished and wasn't acknowledged. So I'm writing this, like when you, in the dedication is just a page and a half of just names of Black artists that people may or may not know. Jazz singers, you know, performers. It's just 2 pages of that. And at the end, I'm just full, you know, and I was like, I can't let anybody else read this. And so I was like, can I get in the studio and read the author's note myself? I'd never done that before. And they were like, sure. And so I went into Thai Deaf where we had done the music, and I read the author's note. I'm literally tearing up in the booth, and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I am. I got it. I'm gonna get it on this tape, you know? And so after it was all done, Andy she goes, I think this might win an Audie. And I was like, no way. She goes, no, this is something special. You know, she was like, this is something special. And I never have those expectations. Like when I'm up for things like that, I'm always like the manager expectation kind of girl. Yeah. And so I did not have I was very honored. For one thing, I knew that no Black author had ever won an Audie in this category. I knew that no Black narrators had ever won in this category. And I knew that no Black love story had ever won in this category, meaning a story that features 2 Black characters. And so I had a sense of, there are certain accomplishments that are yours and you're like, oh my gosh, I did it, you know? And then there's certain accomplishments where you feel like you're a conduit for something else. You're opening a door for someone else. When I won the RITA, I had that sense because no Black author had ever won one before. And I had that sense here too, but with the RITA, I was like, I don't have any chance. 37 years, no one who looks like me has ever won this award. Why would I win it? You know, that's kind of what's in your head.
Yeah.
And I actually had a few friends message me before the awards for the Audies, and they were like, we just want you to manage your expectations. This is a self-published book. You know, there's some really big books in this category. Just manage your expectations. And I was like, you don't have to tell me to manage my expectations because they're always right here. You know,
Right.
I never think I'm going to win anything. And so when they called my name, I was just like, flabbergasted, but also just such a sense of pride, you know, to be in that space and to have to go from no Black narrators having won in this category to 3 in one night.
Yeah.
You know, it was just really special for me to raise the visibility for Black narrators in that space. It's important to me. And so I was amazed and very shocked.
So
and
you
very
are
proud.
you're uniquely qualified to answer
Yeah.
a special question. Are you ready?
Okay. Maybe.
Because you've won the Audie and you've got, you know, all these accolades. So what is it that makes a good audiobook?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I mean, it's the narrator, you know, it's the story and it's the narrator. But there have been times when I have read a story, read it and been like, well, this is fine.
Yeah.
And then I listen to the audiobook and I'm like, this is fantastic.
Right.
It's the voice, you know what I mean? Like when I think about some of my favorite narrators, and like Jacob Morgan is one of my favorite narrators. As soon as his voice comes on, I'm just like, let's just settle in. You know, it's like,
Yes.
And I think it's the emotion, you know, and to me, the best narrators, and I think this is all of them, the way they would approach it is it feels like they're actors, you know, it feels like they're interpreting the content and they're communicating it to you, not just reading it, but communicating it to you. For me, and the story is a big part of it too. But there have been times, like I said, when a story was fine, but the audiobook just really elevated it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
that was my feeling for The Martian. I think that was Scott Brick who did the audio for that. And it seemed like I read The Martian and liked it. And then I listened to the audiobook I was interviewing Andy Weir. And so I listened to the audiobook. And I'm like, well, the audiobook was way better, honestly, than the book.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just so engaging. So
I'm
sure Andy was glad to hear that.
I'm sure he appreciated that.
Yeah.
I think he just won. Did he win this year too? Maybe I'm mistaken.
I think he did win.
Yeah, he did.
Like a Nebula or something. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't track the awards. I'm sorry. I really don't. It's like, am I on the ballot this year? No. Okay. Well, good luck, everybody.
And it was so funny because Andy was up as a narrator, and then Lyric Audiobooks was also up for real. And she was like, "This has never happened before.
Yeah,
I'll just be happy, you know, whatever happens." So it was so funny, but my team was amazing. Like I was very fortunate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do have a team, like you not just for that production, but you actually you're surrounded by an actual team.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your team.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
always curious about that.
Me too. Yeah.
I don't know that it's a team. I have 2 publicists I work with on a consistent basis. And they're amazing. They really help guide me. They take so much abuse. I am so fastidious. When I say like they work with me, especially for covers, I am, oh gosh, I'm just the worst. I tell everybody, if you are working with me on a cover, I'm fine with the fact that you're going to hate me by the end. It's okay. We'll make up later. So they are always with me through that entire process. And I will work with different designers. I do have like a small group of designers I use on a consistent basis because when you're self-publishing. But even when I really I think that a big part of what's worked for me is diversifying how I distribute my content. And so I started traditionally publishing. A lot of people don't realize that I started in trad because nobody knew me. Not that everybody knows me, but a lot of people didn't know me until, you know, some of my indie books, specifically Long Shot. I think when Long Shot won the RITA, a lot of people were like, oh, who is this? And it was self-published, which I was so proud of. So a lot of people didn't realize that I started traditionally publishing. My first 4 books were traditionally published. And I got into self-publishing and just, you know, went, you know, it was, I'm such a control freak.
Yeah.
That really, and the creative process is huge for me. And I want to speak into it. And for me, it's not just the story itself, it's the experience. So it's how you experience it visually. It's how you're going to experience it from an audio perspective. And I like being able to speak into every level of that process. And I have a team, but I am the guiding force for it. I have the vision for it. And then, but everybody can speak into it. And I lean on them. I have a team. I do have a set team of beta and accuracy readers. My beta and I have alpha and beta readers who are ruthless. You know, like I wrote Queen Move, which was, speaking of distribution diversification, that's with a small press, Blue Box, 1001 Dark Nights. Queen Move was distributed for them. I just went back to traditional publishing. I have a book called Before I Let Go coming out in November through Hachette. Forever. But then next year I'm self-publishing again. Like for me, I'm always looking for buckets of readers and, you know, diversifying how I'm distributing the content is a big part of finding them. So I had written Queen Move and it was during the pandemic and it was just not up to par. And I knew it, but I there was nothing I could do about it, you know? And I didn't realize that I was in the beginning stages of depression. I was diagnosed with depression while I was writing Before I Let Go last year, but I didn't realize I was in the beginning stages of depression. And I was like, I'm crying every day. I guess it's the pandemic, but it was more than the pandemic. You know, it was also
that
like
just
caregiver.
Exacerbated it.
Oh, yeah. And in some ways it hit it. Do you know what I mean? Like in some ways I assumed this is what everyone's going through.
Right.
But it was personal. It was me having depression. And so I'd written the book and I sent it off to one of my publicists who is ruthless. And then I sent it off to my alpha reader who was ruthless. And they both came back and they were like, it's just not there. And I felt like I had scraped the bottom of my soul to get that book out. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And they were like, yes, you do. Like, just go back in. And I ended up adding another 30,000 words to that book.
Wow.
I rewrote whole sections of it, reconstructed whole sections of it. And I just kept sending it back to them, until, and their thing was, it still doesn't feel like a Kennedy Ryan book. It doesn't feel like and I just kept rewriting and kept hammering at it until they were like, that's it, you know, like, and I have one of my publicists, we have like a code, like I'll send her something, text her something, and if she just gives me a thumbs up, I'm like, oh no. And we know if it's not a heart, if it's a thumb, then I know. She's like, I like it, but I don't love it. And
my wife and I have that same system.
Yeah, it works well. And I'll say, is that a deliberate thumb? Like, do you mean for it to be a thumb? Or she was like, it's a thumb. You know, or she'll be like, oh wait, no, I meant a heart, you know. So you mentioned word count, and that is actually one of our little pre-written questions, is like, to you in Kennedy Ryan's world, how long is a book? Oh, my books are long. Like for romance, my books are long. My books average 120,000 words.
Oh, that is long for a romance.
It is. Yeah. The real is 135,000. The audiobook is 16 hours long.
Yeah.
So for romance, that's long. You know,
get paid by the word or something?
No. And you know what? It's so interesting because my financial advisor is like, you are going to get paid the same.
I know.
1,000 word book and 100,000 word book? Can
Right.
you write shorter?
This
You
is
know,
yeah.
and so,
That's the
you
brick
know?
wall I run into. Like,
Right?
well, I could do 3 times this word count, but I can sell this book right now.
Yeah.
You know, it depends, because some books sprawl, you
Yeah.
know, like real incorporating that third voice, that third character, and the script. It would have been 120,000 word book, which is my average. But when I add
Right.
that, then it makes it, you know, it added to it. And one book was, it was so long, I did split it into 2. So it became a duology. But
Okay.
that book just, it's All the King's Men, my All the King's Men duology. It just sprawled, you know, and the narrators for that are just fantastic. But it sprawled, and I had to split it into 2 books because it would have been a 250,000 word, you know, book. So, yeah.
That's a good strategy though. If you're chunking out these epics and you start breaking them into multiple books, that's more money. I'm just putting it out there.
Yes, but you know what? This is the thing.
Same.
It has to feel right.
It has to
Because
feel complete
it has
in its
to-
way. Yeah.
And for me, it has to make sense. Like the reason it made sense for me to break All the King's Men into a duology, and at one point it was going to be a trilogy, I just was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just going to write it and see. And there was a natural break that was suspenseful.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, okay, here is the end of book 1, because it's essentially a cliffhanger. And so that made sense. But sometimes, and I hear it from readers, they're like, this was just a money grab. They could have told this story in 1 book. This shouldn't have been split into 2 books. You know, readers say that kind of thing. But for me, it just has to feel right, you know. And like, I have a couple of trilogies, which is like 3 books that follow the same couple. So I have done that. But the thing is, each of those books is 120,000 words. So
right.
doesn't really, you know. So anyway.
The whole 6-book series is what you're saying. Like each of those.
I mean, and so I have some series that are like trilogies that follow the same couple, and then some that are interconnected, you know, where it's different characters, like a series with, and that's what I've been leaning into more lately, like with my Hoop series. So, you know.
Yeah. So I'm curious, when you went from trad to indie, you know, how did you think about marketing? Because you're on your own now, marketing, like, you know, where did you start there? What did you do?
Well, you say, you know, you're on your own. I think like there's a couple of different types of people, right? There are people who are like, I just want to write.
Yep.
You know, and I'm not in, I would prefer to just write and all this other stuff. And I don't necessarily want to do it, but there's a have to and a get to, you know, there's the people who are like, oh my gosh, I have to do everything. And I'm one of those people who's like, oh my gosh, I get to do everything. You know, and like I said, there's a team, you know, and I have my beta readers, and I have to mention my accuracy readers who change based on the topic. Like, I wrote one book where the heroine was indigenous, and I had to have indigenous accuracy readers, or, you know, if I'm writing a character who has lupus, I recruit people who have actually lived through that, just to ensure that I do no harm and that I lend dignity to whatever marginalized experience that is. But I'm very, very careful about that. So I wanted to mention accuracy readers. So I do have this team. But ultimately, it comes down to you. You know, I have an assistant. I have, you know, a couple of publicists who help me, and I have my beta readers. But ultimately, I'm the one who's like seeing the big picture.
Right.
And so I think that one of the frustrating things when you, when I don't know if it was frustrating, but I'm made that way. You know, my son has autism, and I'm very much active in autism advocacy. So when my son was diagnosed with autism when he was 2, by the time he was 5, I had started a foundation for families who have children with autism. And I ran that for 15 years until it became so much that my career in that, it was hard. And so I've found other ways to express my philanthropic urges as far as autism is concerned. But I say that because I am that chick who's like, I'm interested in doing things. You know, there's a problem, let's fix it. How am I a part of the solution? And so when you come into, this was years ago when I was traditionally publishing, so it's very different. I was a debut author, nobody, it's like, who are you? That kind of thing. But it's like, I was already looking for, what's my role? Like, what am I supposed to do? And they're like, oh, well, you write the book and then we do the rest. That was it at that point, which was like, what, 8 years ago now?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, no, that's not how it works for me. Like, I have to do something. And I think that things have changed a lot, but one of the things that I appreciated immediately about self-publishing was getting to create kind of my own marketing strategy and start to build direct connection with my readers, which is huge for me. My newsletter is huge for me. Like it's mine, like I have a Facebook group, but I know authors who have lost their Facebook groups, because things change as far as that platform is concerned. My newsletter is something that I own and that I'm very intentional about building. I write bonus scenes that you can subscribe to my newsletter to get. So it's like, I know that when people are using that to subscribe, they're readers. They're not empty calorie subscribers. They're people who have read my books and who want more. And that's really been the big driver for me building my newsletter, is writing these bonus scenes. Like, did you enjoy their story? Oh my gosh, there's more. I've written a future scene, where you can go to their wedding or whatever, and really building that newsletter with people who are really interested in my content. So the newsletter is huge. The mailing list.
Let's talk a little bit about your newsletter, because that's like number one on the list whenever I'm talking to anybody about how to market their work. Right. So what do you have? So you use bonus content. What's the rest of your strategy? Like, how do you engage with your readers?
You mean how specifically with the mailing list or just in general?
Well, you can answer in general, but let's start with the mailing list. Like,
your email list.
Have kind of a process for because Scott's more aware of your email list than I am, I think, but I get the impression that you have a very robust
I do.
Newsletter.
For me it is, it's about 100,000 subscribers right now. For somebody else that's like pitiful, but for me, that was my goal. Like, you have different goals. And my goal last year was I wanted to get to 100,000 subscribers. And really, but I didn't want to do it. Here's the thing. When I first started building my newsletter, I was doing it with like lots of giveaways and subscribe to my newsletter. Come on, I'm over here,
Notice me.
I'm over here. Take gift cards, take free books, and not that I don't do giveaways anymore. But I was a part of a lot of like these multi-author like giveaway kind of things, which there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of those people are, for me, what I call like empty calorie subscribers. Like they just showed up for that, but they're not really interested in what I'm doing necessarily. And so they don't open, they don't interact. And of course that starts to affect my open rate, like those people who are completely disengaged, when they're not opening, they're not interacting, it begins to affect your open rate. It begins to affect, I guess algorithmically, for want of a better word, it affects how your newsletter performs. And so I do regular purges. My assistant and I go through and we'll do like, if somebody hasn't opened a newsletter in a year, we just remove them. We send them an email or two like, hey, we see that you haven't opened a newsletter in a year. So, did you want to stay? And if not, then we'll, part ways. And some of them are like, oh my gosh, I wasn't getting it, or I didn't know, and I want to stay, and they can stay. But we do regular purges where so that the newsletter is not just big, but that it's healthy, because if I have a huge newsletter, but like 1%, that's just arbitrary. 1% is opening, and it's like, oh, well, I'd like to be more in like a 30% range or the 40% range or whatever. And so we trim on a consistent basis. We purge those people who are not interacting at all. And so I try to share some personal stuff, like I'll share, it's mostly my work, but I also want readers to feel like they know me, like, and I've done a lot of that on TikTok. Like TikTok is revolutionizing publishing. You know, I know Book Talk is revolutionizing publishing. And it's really opening a lot of opportunities for us as indie authors that we've never had before. And it's influencing what publishers are doing, what publishers are acquiring, and who they're paying attention to. So definitely I'm on TikTok, and I'll link sometimes in my newsletter to things I'm doing on TikTok so that my readers who may not even be on TikTok will know, okay, these are the kinds of things I'm doing. I always make sure to include the link to my Facebook group. Every time I send out a newsletter, I get like this big rush of people who join my Facebook group because they didn't even know it existed, or they're like, oh, you have a Facebook group? Oh my gosh. You know, so I'm constantly directing people to where they can find me. And my Facebook group is probably like my safest space. That's where I'm most vulnerable. It's a closed space. It's a private space. And I think though that group of readers probably feels like they know me best. So it's kind of like you have almost like these circles of intimacy. You know, I would say that my Facebook group is probably that most intimate place. I'll go live and I'm talking about my life, and, you know, we're interacting. And then of course there's Instagram and TikTok, and then the newsletter. So it's all these layers, and it's not like this one thing is a magic bullet. It's just constantly laying layers of interaction and reaching. That's for me, that's how I'm approaching it, you know?
Wow. That's fantastic, Kennedy. You know, I'm curious, how do you view your success? Like when you started, what did you think success would be? What was your vision for success?
I think everybody's like, oh my gosh, I want a list. You know, oh my gosh, you know, I want to do this. And I haven't hit the New York Times list yet because that's a code I'm not sure we're going to crack these days.
Not when they seem to be actively against you.
Right. Like indie authors can sell the most and still not make that list. You know, it's very unfortunate. So you have to kind of like, I have had to, and I did list, you know, I listed with Queen Move, which was amazing. And I used to think, oh my gosh, I want my books to be movies. You know, now, you know, I have 7 books that have been optioned for film and television, 2 series, like, you know, groups of books that have been optioned. And I want to be a 6-figure author. I want to be this figure author. And you get to that, and you're just like, what I realize is that those are all kind of like moving benchmarks.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I think that success is so personal, because I have come to realize, and this is going to sound so writerly, like, of course that's what success is, Kennedy. Of course it is. Yeah, right. It's listing, it's making money, it's this, of course. For me, it is impact. You know, for me, success is impact. And I know it sounds like that's easy to say. I'm not the most successful author. I know like other people do better or do worse. I've learned not to compare myself to other people. I don't look to the left. I don't look to the right. I think comparison is just so unhealthy in a lot of ways. Like I will look at what other people are doing for marketing. Like, oh, this is a good idea. Oh, that's a good idea. But when it comes to my content, the thing that drives what I write is creative conviction. Like I have to feel conviction around something. And for me, that's when I see the most impact. Like the book that won the RITA long shot, that book took me 2 years to write, but I had to take my time because it dealt with intimate partner violence in a very graphic way. And I felt such a sense of responsibility. And so when you're writing something like that, there is a lot of responsibility. I had accuracy readers, I had interviewers, I interviewed survivors, I interviewed social workers, I interviewed people who work at shelters. It was an undertaking and it was a commitment, but I was convicted about it. You know, I had seen, there was a football player, and I can't remember his name right now because my mind is a sieve, but he had beaten his girlfriend in the elevator and dragged her out. And when I saw that, I felt such indignation. And for me, it sounds crazy. Indignation is a real driving force for me. When I saw that, I was like, I'm going to write a book about that. And my husband's like, it's going to be a romance. And I'm like, okay, I got this, because the hero is not the abuser. But when I wrote that book, I felt such a sense of purpose. And that is, there's certain key words for me. Purpose is one of them. Conviction is one of them. Indignation is one of them. Like the All the King's Men series that I wrote that after I saw pipeline protests. Like, it just depends. But when I talk about success feeling like impact for me, that was worth it. Like, I can't compare making a list or making a great living, which that's amazing, to a woman messaging me and saying, I left an abusive relationship after I read your book. How can I compare those things? Do you know what I mean? I get messages from people who are like, I'm now volunteering at a shelter because I read that book. I hadn't spoken to my mom in 10 years because I grew up in an abusive home, and our relationship was fractured. After I read your book, I called my mom. There is no comparison. Like, and I think that it might seem easy for me to say, being relatively successful, but I mean it. Like, for me, success is impact. And I feel, for me, this is also going to sound very writerly, so just forgive it. But for me, writing is not just vocational. I feel a calling to write. Like, I feel like there's something that I'm supposed to be saying. And that if I'm saying what I'm supposed to be saying, when I'm supposed to say it, it's going to find the right people. And that feels like success to me.
I think a lot of authors would agree with you there. Yeah, I know I do. It was like a calling, a purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You agree with that, Kev?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have, writing was unavoidable in my life since like 5 years old. So it's definitely a calling and purpose. Yeah.
Right.
I quoted you. I'm gonna requote you over and over again. You said, for me, success is impact. I love that.
Yeah.
As an encapsulation of what you said. I love it.
I couldn't agree more, Kennedy. Yeah. So we've got about 10 minutes left here, and I was hoping we could get to some questions from the audience, Kennedy.
We have some really interesting ones too. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Okay. All right. First, what is the square root of?
Exactly.
That's what you're. I know that's what you're expecting, Kennedy.
There. Yeah.
You were absolutely dreading the questions.
Do I need to know the periodic table for these?
Yes. We need charts. We need you to get some charts going.
Graphs.
Yeah. We got from G.I. Robinson. Kennedy, can you talk specifically about marketing audiobooks, or are they just corollary to book sales?
I think that my perspective on marketing audiobooks has evolved. Because when I first started making audiobooks, I didn't even really know that you could do them yourself. I was selling my rights to publishers, which is totally fine. Like, there are some people who are like, I don't want to bother with, first of all, it's expensive. And it's time, it's time intensive. So I don't even want to bother with that. So that's a completely legitimate route to take. So I didn't really think that much about marketing my audiobooks until I started making them myself, until I stopped selling my rights. And then when you spend all that money, you're like, oh, we're making this back. You're like, oh, we're making this money back right here. A few things that I've done, I did not. First of all, I think that one of the biggest parts of marketing your audiobook, and this feels like it's of course it is for me, the narrator. Like, there are certain narrators who bring their own fan base, who bring their own readership. Like, there are people who don't know who I am and don't care what I'm writing, but when they hear, oh, Jason Clark, oh my gosh, I think that choosing the right narrator, and that's not to say that you don't give narrators who are lesser known a chance. Like I said, Ebony Flowers had never done an audiobook before, and she just felt right. And so there were other narrators who were more, who were better known, but I was like, this is the character. And it ended up being an amazing relationship that we've had, and incredibly collaborative. But I think that choosing the right narrator is step one in marketing for me, because so many times they bring their own readership and they bring their own fan base. That's one. I have a dedicated audio list.
Okay.
So I have done a few short stories like that kind of branch off from certain books, or, you know, I mentioned doing those bonus epilogues.
Yeah.
I actually invested, and it was an investment. Like it's like an hour and a half or 2 hour book, and you have to, you know, pay for that. And
Right.
I offer it free, you know, as a sign up for my audio list, because there are some people who are they're just audio people. And
Yep.
so there are certain like bonus scenes or short stories that I've written, and I've made the investment of creating audio versions of those. So I have, you know, people on board your list in various ways, but I have a dedicated audio list. And so I communicate with that segment of my newsletter and mailing list specifically. I don't communicate with everyone, but I'll communicate with them specifically about things that are happening with audio. You know, when I'm announcing narrators, which we should, you know, do. I'm announcing narrators. I'm members of great audio groups like Oral Fixation, you know, on Facebook. I'm sure you have other more sophisticated ways of doing this. There's an app called Headliner that I use to like do samples and clips of, you know, from the audiobook, and I post those all over, and I use those. I'm uploading those to YouTube now. I upload segments of it to TikTok. You know, it's just like finding ways to get that content out there to different segments. Now that I own, Real is the first audiobook that I've taken which is very exciting for me. I'll be doing my first Chirp, you know, soon. So I'm just, so I have books in libraries, but those books that are in libraries before were the ones that I had sold. So now that I'm broadening and, you know, broadening my distribution, I'm seeing I just wanted to see, you know, and I was like, it's Real in libraries. And I went through I use Libby all the time. My apps are Libby and Hoopla, you know, for me as a listener. And so I was like, let me just request Real through Libby. And they were like, it's a 15-week wait or something. I was like,
Fantastic.
So,
I love
don't know
hearing
if that answers the questions, but those are just a few of the things that
that's an interesting marker for success, by the way. That it's on a waiting list. Yay!
It's on a waiting list. Yeah.
Success.
That's fantastic. No, that was fantastic. We've got a question here from Christine Kaleni. Is there a must-have in any romance?
I mean, I don't know if this is what you mean by definition. There is some debate right now. For me, the must-have obviously is a happily ever after. You know, there's a big debate actually going on right now in the romance community about whether you have to have a happily ever after for it to be a romance. And some people are like, why should you have to have a happily ever after? And I think Sarah McLean, who's one of my closest friends, I know, name drop, but she says, one of the things she always says is that we are the genre of hope. You know, like people think, oh, romance is smutty or romance is whatever. I think we are the genre of hope, because we are a safe place. You know that you're going to get a happily ever after. I think that is essential. For me, if you're talking about what makes a good romance, for me, it is chemistry, it is connection, it is believing that these two people belong together. And I have kind of like a soulmate gauge. Like, do these people feel like soulmates? Or is it like, it could be you or it could be somebody else, whatever. Like, and I think in real life, I probably believe that to a degree. Like, there may not be one person for everyone, but I think in the context of a romance novel, you need to feel like if these people aren't together, there's going to be something missing, you know?
Yeah.
And when I say something missing, I don't mean from that person, because I believe in the integrity of a character, meaning, especially for women, I like to see women whole. I like to see women, not like I'm looking for a man who's going to complete me, but I'm looking for a man who's going to be a partner. I'm looking for a man who's secure enough because I'm such a badass. I'm looking for a man, you know, it's like, I want to see a woman who is whole. And so a lot of times, especially if I'm writing second chance, which I tend to do a lot, people are like, they'll meet when they're young and then they go their separate ways. And my readers are always like, 10 years? Why are they apart for 10 years? And I'm like, well, in 10 years, you know, she develops her career. She figures out what she likes. She figures out who she is. You know, I don't want my readers to think this story is just about, you know, girl meets boy and then they fall in love. Like there is some.
Now the girl's story is complete.
Right.
Yeah,
like I want them to be like, this chick is complete.
Yes.
You know, so that's what I mean by integrity. Base word integer, whole. You know, I want someone who is whole. And that doesn't mean perfect. You know, that's not what I'm saying. But when they come together, you know, you feel like, oh my gosh, they belong together. But at the same time, she was pretty happy by herself too. You know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that answers the question.
That was fantastic. Kennedy, I wanted to give you a chance here too to talk about the charity work that you do, the philanthropic work that you do, and plug that a little bit. We've got a few minutes left, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that as well.
It's one of my favorite things that I do. Like I alluded to before, my son was diagnosed with autism when he was 2. I think by the time he was 5 years old, I had started a foundation for families who have children with autism, and I ran that for about 13 years. My son is now 21, but my son is profoundly affected by autism, and he will be with us. You know, we're lifelong caregivers, and he's amazing. And I ran the foundation, like I said, for maybe like 13 years, and my career just kind of took off in a way that I hadn't anticipated.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know that I can do both of these things anymore. And I ended up, and plus, when I first started, there were not a lot of people who were offering the things that we were offering. And so it felt like, again, I felt called to it. I felt like I was stepping into something and offering something that was I could uniquely provide that people uniquely needed. And then 15 years down the road, we've really evolved in our understanding of autism and our services and the resources that we're offering. And there was a little bit of redundancy. So I was like, oh, there's other people who are doing this. I'm just going to direct them to those people. And I'm going to focus on writing. And of course, that didn't last long, just because I have such a passion for autism advocacy. And so Ginger Scott, who is my fellow romance author, and she's an autism aunt, and she is a reporter who has done a lot of reporting around autism advocacy. She and I got together, 7 years ago now, and we created Lift for Autism. And it is an annual bookish auction. And the month of April is Autism Awareness Month. That's when we do it. But we start recruiting, like, you know, people who are going to give to it, donate to it. It's authors, it's narrators. I think I mentioned in our little pre-talk, the last couple of years, our highest bidding items, and I'm talking about like $2,000 kind of items, have been from narrators. You know, narrators who offer a Zoom call, or narrators who, it could be an author who signs a series and the narrator signs a series too. It just depends. But this last year we raised in April, we raised $133,000, and we partner with Culture City, who is a national autism organization. All of that money goes directly to them. We don't have a foundation. We have a charitable initiative, and we are financially connected to Culture City. So whenever people are bidding, I'm telling you, we have like an auction set up, and the whole month of April, people are checking out the items that people have donated. And it's that last week of April that people are actually bidding. It's a bloodbath. I mean, it is so intense. People are like, no, I can't believe I lost that bid. And you know, people the smartest people just let everybody like hash it out all week. And then when they know there's like 5 minutes left in the auction, they like zoom in, you know, and they get it at the last minute. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. You know, I have an amazing team that works on that. And we do it every year. We're already working on next year's, you know?
Yeah.
So it merges two of the things I'm most passionate about, which is autism advocacy and books, you know?
Yeah.
So
where can people find more about this? Like,
we have a site, Lift, LIFT, the number 4, autism.com. Lift, the number 4, autism.com is where all of the information is stored there.
All right. I dropped that in the chat, so everybody there can go click on that.
Thank you.
And we'll put it in whatever show notes that Scott does, because I have nothing to do with that. So
No, this is great. Well, Kennedy, we're at 12. This has been the most awesome hour, right, Kev?
Thank you guys for having me. I had such a great time.
No, I'm just sorry we have to end it.
I know. I could keep chatting easily. Yeah.
Oh, as you can tell, I could keep talking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on that at all.
Nope, not at all.
No, you were fantastic. Thank you so much for being a part of this and for sharing your wisdom and your experience with everybody. Things like this make a big difference for authors, especially as they're coming in. And knowing that you're kind of hybrid. I mean, you're
definitely
you're running both roads. Authors want to know all the things in all the directions, all the options.
Right.
So you are an example of all the options.
Right. And I work with it's kind of 3 roads: a traditional publisher, a small publisher, and indie. Like I'm not closed to anything.
Yeah. There you go. That's good.
No, that's awesome. Well, thanks again, Kennedy. And where can everyone find you online to sign up for your email list?
Kennedy Ryan Writes, Kennedy like the president, Ryan RYAN Writes WRITES.com. Kennedy Ryan Writes is my website, but I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm in all the places.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. So everyone that's tuned in, be sure to sign up for the wonderful Kennedy Ryan's email list. And if you got questions on making an audiobook, that's what Findaway Voices is here for. You can reach us at support@findawayvoices.com or our website. And if you got questions on making an ebook or print book, we've got Kevin Tumlin.
You want to get that book out there to the world as wide as possible. That's Draft2Digital. That's what we do. So draft2digital.com. That's draft2digital.com.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for your time today. And tune in again next week. We've got some more great authors as part of this series. You can visit findawayvoices.com and click on this live author events button. And we've got the whole lineup there. This will be posted on YouTube in another day. And the people that attended will get the replay right away. All right. Thanks again, Kennedy. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kevin. And we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.